So in this video, I just wanted to break down really quickly all the Panicle Hydrangeas that Nixa Hardware had in stock at the time, maybe go through some care techniques, which is going to be very short because Panicle Hydrangeas don't take a whole lot of care. What I like about the particular varieties and what I don't. And I think you're going to find that they're very, very easy, and this is going to be a very easy video to follow. The first Panicle Hydrangea that I found while I was walking around was the Bobo. B-O-B-O, not to be confused with bonobo, which is a monkey. The Bobo gets about 3 to 4 feet. It's kind of been my experience. It's somewhere around there, but closer to 3. I think on this particular tag, it says that it's going to be 2.5 to 3 feet. I think when it comes to plants, pigeonholing them with only a 6-inch variance is a little risky. You and I both know that it doesn't really, 6 inches isn't going to make or break your landscape design. The Bobo, with all Panicle Hydrangeas, I'm just going to do a broad brush with this. Panicle Hydrangeas are going to be probably the easiest care that you can ever do when it comes to any of the hydrangeas. Panicle Hydrangeas are the easiest because they bloom on new growth. I really think that anything that blooms on new growth is the easiest way for me to trim. Unfortunately, that comes with the later bloom time. Things that bloom on old growth, like azaleas, forsythia, those things are going to bloom early in the year because they've already set their buds. Things that bloom on new growth need to set their buds in that year, and then they bloom later, usually in the summer. Expect your panicle to start pushing its blooms in June. They're amazing for dry floral arrangements. Anybody that does dried flowers typically always has Panicle Hydrangeas. I have about 12 Bobos at my house. That's this one right here. I've fallen more in love with the pufferfish. Now the pufferfish gets about a foot taller. I like that for its open habit. The Bobo has a tendency to lay down on me when it's very young. And so what I typically do with Bobos is I trim about a foot out of them every year. So I want my Bobos to look like clouds. And how I do that is I produce more blooms, not big old giant heavy blooms. So the less stems I have that have blooms on them, the bigger the panicle is going to be. So the less stems, the less blooms, the bigger the blooms. The more stems, the more blooms, the smaller the bloom. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking, in my particular situation at my house, I'm looking for puffy clouds as a beautiful backdrop for the salvia and the other things that are happening in front, the black-eyed Susans, that sort of. As far as a companion plant for Panicle Hydrangeas, I think it depends on the Panicle Hydrangea. Black-eyed Susans are not necessarily a great companion plant for the Bobo because the Bobo is going to grow a lot slower. The black-eyed Susans are going to somewhat overtake the Bobos. So you trim the Bobo down, in my situation, to produce more, to thicken it up, right? I'm gonna get more blooms, but they're not gonna be as big. So that's kind of the rub with those. I would, if I could do it all over again, I would probably put the black-eyed Susans behind the Bobos, but it ended up working out really good. The Bobos now are big enough that they compete with the black-eyed Susans, and it's working out, and it looks good. But there for a couple years, it was kind of touch and go because the Bobos just really hadn't gotten their feet underneath of them. They hadn't gotten to that leap period. They were still in the sleepy, crawling period. So year 3, I think they really started to take off. That's the Bobo. And I did do these in kind of ascending order when it comes to size. That's not the only deciding factor, but that is a factor for me in how I like to layer. It is super windy today. It's like 80-mile-an-hour winds sustained all day. I mean, the wind is just insane. So this is that Little Lime Punch, right? So Little Lime Punch is a 3 to 5 footer. You gotta understand, Limelights are out of patent. They've gotta come up with more best-selling plants, right? Little Lime Punch is supposed to turn into that punch colored. That's how it got its name. Sooner. It's supposed to have stiffer stems. I haven't experimented with one of these yet. There's just so many Panicle Hydrangeas out there. It's really hard for me to figure all of them out. You got to give me some time. But the Limelight Punch isn't going to disappoint me. You know why? Because it's a Panicle Hydrangea and it's a proven winter Panicle Hydrangea. I'm not going to have an issue with it, right? It's going to be right there with like the Little Lime, the Limelight Prime. We're going to get to that. I don't know if this is going to lay down in the summer storms. That's one of my big deciding factors when I think about Panicle Hydrangeas. Is it going to lay down? Because it just ends up breaking your heart. Those panicles get nice and big and thick and you're in love with them, but when they reach maturity, you get a storm, and now that water is almost contained like a sponge, and it just weighs down. Anybody that's been in the infantry and had to carry a 2-quart and 2 1-quart canteens, you get what I'm talking about. Water weighs a lot. That's the Limelight Punch. This is $39.84. I think it's a good price. $39.84 for the Bobo over here too. Again, it's a good price. Here's the thing, if you're not seeing, I want to tell you about this stuff so that way when we start looking on clearance, you get to make the decision. Do I want the super healthy one, or do I want the one that, you know, the leaves kind of look dried out? But I'll tell you what, I never feel like I'm taking a risk when I buy a Panicle Hydrangea on a clearance rack. So this one is in a little 1 gallon, and this is the little Quickfire. Now, I'm a huge fan of the little Quickfire. They bloom on new growth. Azaleas bloom on old growth. What worries me about azaleas is how we have really cold wind and windy winters, sometimes dry winters. Azaleas bloom on old growth. So any kind of tissue damage is going to result in less flowers, okay? Now, some of the newer varieties of azaleas are going to bloom on new growth also, so old wood and new wood. A lot of them don't have a big show during the spring like the traditional azalea, but they kind of bloom all throughout the year and give you some sort of, you know, feel goods throughout the year. The little Quickfire is my go-to substitution for an azalea. In our area, azaleas don't do really as well as they do for you folks on the East Coast. In Raleigh, y'all can grow azaleas in the woods. I'm sure in Georgia, y'all just grow them wherever you want. Here, it's hard to get them to stick. Little Quickfire is my go-to because it only gets about 3 feet tall. It blooms on new growth. You can't kill it with diesel fuel. The best way to kill them is stop watering them. Hydrangea means water vessel in Latin, so let's face it, it's going to be difficult when something likes water as much as these do to kill it with too much water. I don't plant them in boggy places. I plant them in places that are going to maybe hold a little extra water. A place where you can't grow an echinacea or a black-eyed Susan because there's too much water, you might be able to get Panicle hydrangeas to stick there, and you're going to be happy for it because they share a lot of the same characteristics as those, you know, workhorse perennials. I actually think this has a longer bloom time than black-eyed Susans. It'd be tough. I'd have to measure it out, and I'm too lazy to keep track of all that. So one of my main reasons that this is one of my favorite panicles is because it has an open habit to its bloom, much like the pufferfish has an open panicle. I'm going to talk about the pufferfish here in a second, but it doesn't get weighed down in the summer storms. And you can grow a little Quickfire in a lot shadier environment than you think you're able to. I'm not talking about super dense shade, but I have seen them bloom in pretty dense shade. They have a white flower like all Panicle hydrangeas that matures to a different color like pink or a deep, you know, like a raspberry red. The Panicle is devised of little flowers, and as those petals on those flowers age, as it works its way up the panicle, they're gonna start turning pink. Quickfire does that sooner. It is a quick fire. It turns fire quicker. So you have like tiny Quickfires is a new thing that's out now. Quickfire, fire and ice, and then you have regular Quickfires. And that's kind of the order in size that they go to. Little Quickfires, if you're looking for a fire and forget area that maybe stays a little on the wet side and you're having a hard time getting stuff to grow in there, you might want to try coming and picking up a 1 gallon little Quickfire and stuffing it in that area and seeing if it will work. This is Limelight Prime in a 3 gallon for $39.84. The Limelight was going off patent and I think they needed something else to talk about. This had probably been in development for a while. They wanted a stiffer stem because what am I complaining about? I'm complaining about them falling over in the summer storms or overhead watering. You run a sprinkler, they're weighing them down. Any sort of spray that would hit them would lay them down because they would just soak up all that water. Those panicles were so grand and so beautiful that when they fall over, it crushes your soul. It is the most demoralizing thing you're gonna run into. Proper pruning obviously is a thing that needs to happen, but I'm lazy, so I just knock everything out down to about 8 inches and it seems to work out really well, as long as I don't need the privacy, right? That's the Limelight Prime, still has that grandiose bloom, but it's supposed to have stiffer stems. I don't have a Limelight Prime yet. I haven't tested this out personally. This is just from the PW website. They're just supposed to have sturdier, stronger stems. It's supposed to be a replacement for little limes. Little limes lay down. We overhead water at a nursery I used to work at, and me and my buddy who worked there, we would just go out and we'd trim hydrangeas. I just knock all the blooms off of them and everything as soon as they came in or within a reasonable amount of time, because once those panicles reached maturity, they were going to be falling all over each other and I wasn't going to sell them. So I might as well have this big, beautiful leafy version, right? Might not have any flowers on it. At least the contractors will buy it. But if it's falling all over the place and they put it at the customer's house and they dig the hole, just looks like an umbrella, they're not going to purchase them. And they didn't. It was almost like once the panicles reached maturity, any of my older stock that had been weighed down, I'd trim them back. 3 weeks later, they'd be nice and full. I'd sell them like hotcakes. It was those fallen over branches deterred them from buying them. So I just cut them off. It was pretty easy, man. I had one of those whole big giant green trash cans that you can drag around. I had a whole thing filled with just blooms. All right, here's Quickfire. This is Quickfire hydrangea. Now this one's the same price as all the other 3-gallon proven winners, $39.84. In the summer storms, this isn't going to lay over, right? This isn't going to lay over at all. It shouldn't. If it's laying over, you've got a lot bigger problems than does your panicles lay over. It has a big giant panicle and little flowers kind of stick out of it. It's not necessarily as grandiose, but they're really, really pretty because they're reliable. They're like me, right? I might not be the prettiest guy in the world, but Bonnie hitched her wagon to me because I'm reliable. That is the Quickfire. So you have Quickfire, Fire and Ice, Little Quickfire. Those are the ones that don't lay down as much. The pufferfish, and I've got several pufferfish. I've got pufferfish that I've been cultivating. I've left that nursery, but I had one in a 15-gallon pot that would sell pufferfish all year long because it looked so pretty. And it has the grand blooms, but they're a little looser, so the water drains out of them a lot sooner. The pufferfish is an amazing hydrangea. It really does some good work. I've got one at my house. I've got 4 other at another property that I planted in full dense shade. Okay, maybe not the densest shade because as the trees move, it lets light through. So dappled shade would be a word for that. And they're doing really good. They're not dead, let's just put it like that. And they bloom okay. They don't bloom amazing like they do in my front yard. It looks really good in the front. And you know, hindsight being 2020, if I would have known the pufferfish was a thing, then maybe I would have foregone the Limelight Prime or Little Lime that I have at my house. I would have foregone all of the Limelights. I would have foregone all the Bobos, and I just would have planted pufferfish. But that's hindsight, right? I think you give pufferfish a little bit of time, it's going to do work for you. The verdict is still out on Little Lime Punch, but I think the plant propagators, the plant cultivators have figured out that we want stiffer stems. So I think these newer varieties of panicles that are coming out, we just got to test them out and try them, you know, to see if they fall down. Little Quickfire, fantastic. There's nothing bad to say about it. It's just not as pretty as the pufferfish. It's not as pretty as the Bobo. It's not as pretty as the Limelight Prime, but it's reliable. You can trust that that plant isn't going to cause you very many problems. The Bobo is going to cause you fits for a little while until it grows up. That's also like me. Ask my mom. Limelight Prime, pretty, stiffer stems, and I really haven't tested that out. But what I was seeing in the nursery is the Limelight Primes were looking a lot better. They were laid over less than the Limelights and the Bobos. And then Quickfire is a big boy. Limelight Prime is going to be like a 5-footer. Like for the most part, everything here is under 5 feet except for the Quickfire, and this is an 8-foot hydrangea. So it's right. It's the Fire and Ice is in between the two. Let's see. Yeah, 6 to 8 feet tall. So look for that to happen. Do you want a hydrangea tree? Look into Quickfires. Look into the Quickfire because that is a fantastic hydrangea tree. All right, guys. My name is Stuart Moore. Thank you very much for letting me into your home to talk about plants.